You're not.
You're not, please.
I'm going to take my video off and I will be here listening. FYI.
Or Bruce emailing about the cat that's leaking urine.
Is someone on the phone with their hand raised? Who is that?
With that.
Yes, this is Jonathan Markowitz.
Okay, thank you. Just we're going to mute you. We're not taking speakers right now. Brian, please stay muted. You are muted now and stay that way. I don't know what happened to George. I just spoke to him. He said he was getting on to do the land back.
And he said he doesn't have the program, period. He also said,
Janet, can you mute yourself, please, Janet?
period.
PK or Dwayne? Not here either. All right, well, welcome everybody. This is the Pacifica Fight Back virtual national town hall on reviving Pacifica. We have a very interesting program today. We do have with us Akile Anai from the African People's Socialist Party, which was recently the target of a FBI raids in 2 states and an attack. Oh, here's Dwayne. Good, welcome, Dwayne. Yeah, I'll ask you to unmute. You're one of our MCs this morning. And
good morning,
George. Good morning. If George Funmaker is on, I'll ask him to speak up because George is supposed to do a land back acknowledgement and commitment. But we do recognize that all of this land, Turtle Island, is stolen, and you cannot build a free society or have a free speech radio network on stolen land without committing yourself to reversing that theft and the genocide that's related to it. Here at KPFK, we're on the, I'm here in Los Angeles, which is Tongva land and Chumash and related peoples. And all the other stations similarly. KPFA is on Ohlone land, WBI, Lenape, and so on. So I guess if George is not here, what I'm going to do is share the short video about the raid, and then Dwayne can take over and do some introductions for our speaker. Hang on a moment. All right, it's muted.
While they were carrying this out, refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the. He refused to do.
For this address, keep your hands up and follow orders. This is the FBI. We have a warrant.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out. Something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here, that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
Yes, David?
Text message about the way PK.
I'm sorry?
Did you see the text message
Michael, mute.
about the rain and PK?
No, it is not.
Okay, I texted both of them.
Okay,
And
name is
then I
on.
called, I know, I called him and he said he doesn't have the program and he said that he is stuck in traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, breach, what do you need? They want, I don't know. Oh, it's all better than money. Oh, thank you.
We will build a movement of white people that says hands off the Uhuru movement.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we had the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of black people around the world.
Hello, I'm Congress.
Thank you. Please mute if you're not being called on to speak. We'll repeat it a couple of times, but yeah, Sheila's holding up a sign that says, please mute yourself. If you're on the phone, you can mute with, I believe, *6. And if you're on a computer, use your mute. Well, yeah. The problem with that is we have people who have to speak and then they need to unmute themselves. So please just mute yourself. Okay, thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. I just hit mute all. You should not be able to speak. So if you unmute yourself to speak and say you agree with Barbara, you don't have to do it. So our first speaker is Akile, who you saw in that video, and I'll ask her to unmute and explain the situation that you saw reflected there and what's being done about it. Akile?
Works for us.
Thank you for that really vital report and analysis. I think it sets the context for this meeting in many ways, and for the political, social, economic crisis and struggle of the society that is impacting the struggle and crisis at Pacifica as well. I think that it really gives voice to an anti-colonial, anti-capitalist message that everyone needs to hear and take into account. And I will be turning it back over to Duane, but George Funmaker is with us. As you said, this is a system based on stolen land and genocide and enslavement. And George is here to speak about the whole concept of land back. George Funmaker, can you unmute yourself? Or I'll see if I can. Thank you. Oh, thank you. V. Patel Adams, I got a message from PK, who is supposed to be one of our MCs, that she's trapped in traffic, and she thought that you could step in along with Duane. I don't see Duane on the call now, though, but if you would like to take over.
Call for the last 25 minutes.
Oh, there you are. Okay, there you go. I guess because you're on the phone. All right, yeah, Duane and Manish Patel Adams, please take it away. Duane, you need to unmute. There we go.
Actually, you told Patel Adams to take it away.
Well, go ahead. I didn't see you, that's why I asked Manisha, but.
Okay, well, according to the outline. We're going now to, we didn't do the question and answer with Akile, so we're going to Bernard White. Is Bernard White?
Has a little time. I think we could, if people do have questions or want to respond to, what she put forward, I think we have some time for that, and then we'll go to Bernard and.
Okay, well, is she still on the call?
Yeah, yes, she is.
Okay, so then those of you who have a question, according to Michael, go right ahead and either put it in the chat, I suppose, or unmute.
Yeah, preferably in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And I don't see anything going on in the chat. Do you, Michael?
The last thing I saw was a request to George to put his the text of that land back acknowledgement in the chat. I don't see any questions right now.
Okay. We'll give him another 30 seconds to see if anything comes through then. Okay, I see that. Well, I do see Fred Cook asking the question, what heat has happened to Uhuru in Oakland? Is that germane?
Akile, you want to unmute? Is there anything you can say about the Uhuru House in Oakland?
Okay, we do have, I'm gonna acknowledge the fact that Dale Lehman wants to be acknowledged with acknowledging other, I suppose, indigenous groups or peoples. Three Fires Confederacy, the Potomac, the Potawatomi, Totomi, Adwa, Ojibwe Nation, the Menominee Nation, the Ho Chunk Nation, Miami Nation, Peoria, Sac, and Fox. And Akile, we do have another question regarding Maya here. Reading the, as it is written, Maya here, what is your call to action for organizations that are currently working to support Black reparations?
Thanks. So I do see a hand from Ralph Pointer. I'm not sure if Dwayne could see that, and then we'll probably have to move to our other speakers, but thank you very much, Akile.
Okay, let's go, Ralph.
Oh, great.
Okay. All right. We're at a point, we want to thank Akile for a tremendous presentation, very informative, and for those who do have her information, to follow up and respond to her call to action. I've seen in the chat a lot of complaints about running behind time and not being germane and not taking care of issues that may be important to those who are in the chat, but we do have an outline and I'm trying to follow it. Right now, I believe we're about 10 minutes behind with the presentation from Bernard White. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah, I think we should move to Bernard if he's on the phone waiting.
Okay, well, if Bernard will chime in, you have, I believe we've allotted, according to this schedule, 10 minutes, Bernard.
Yeah, it's *6 to unmute on the phone, Bernard.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can now.
Oh, okay. Yes, first I want to thank the Sister Akile for bringing to us what happened to the Uhuru movement. It sounded like almost like the BAI in the old times. I'm a former BAI program director, producer. I did Wake Up Call. We started it back in 1992, me and Amy Goodman and a host of other people. And this is the kind of information that we need to have. It lets us know what's going on in the country. And we just don't get it to the degree that we just shared with the people. Because right now the FBI is being praised for what they're doing. They've gone after, but praised by some people anyway, going after what's happening at Trump's Mar-a-Lago, and they're being praised for doing what's considered to be the right thing. But had they been doing the right thing all along, they would have seen the development of the militia, and those militia would have they would see how they have grown and how they are a much greater threat than Black people and people of color have ever presented to the government. I'd like to say a little something that might be a bit controversial. Maybe a lot of people would be upset by it. But in order to bring back Pacifica into the kind of station that is going to be relative to people, marginalized people, because right now it's not. What I think we have to do is do a forensic analysis of how we got to where we are and where the power is in this whole equation. And I think one of the worst things that happened to Pacifica is this sham called the democracy. And that is what really happened with Pacifica is that there were some people who were upset, mostly racist, white folks, who were upset with the direction that Pacifica was going into. At the same time, Pacifica was making a lot of money because they had a lot of listeners, because they were giving people information that they couldn't get in other places. And they, by instituting this so-called democratic process, they began to, and the people who were on the outside were now invited inside. And the way it is structured, the people with money are able to buy the election and come in and then determine the direction and the staffing and everything within the institution. And I think that has to be looked at. It has to be realized that is a problem. It was only supposed to be there for a while before it got evaluated, but it has gone on indefinitely. And as a result, like the WBAI, which I was a part of, they came in and began to systematically get rid of the staff and then change the programs. And two people who were millionaires began to structure the station in their own image. And right now, that millionaire is a person who sells a lot of vitamins and stuff, and he's on almost 24 hours a day doing fundraisers. And that as a result, he raises the most money. And their justification for keeping that format is that he raises a lot of money. But of course he's going to raise a lot of money if he's on it all the time. But I think that we have, in order to do that, there needs to be a move to change these boards to so we can get back to doing real kind of programming. I'm no longer in New York, but I still periodically listen to WBAI. It is not what it used to be. It does not raise money like it used to raise, and it has become more and more irrelevant. That's pretty much it. Hello?
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. V. Patel Adams, did you want to introduce our next speaker? Noel?
Yes, I am. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the things I've done, I'm gonna try and read my bio. Unless you guys want to read it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a lesbian. I'm a journalist. I'm a private investigator. I'm a practicing attorney. I liberated Mumia's first book from prison, like literally went to his prison in 1992 and got that manuscript out of prison and into the public debate. I produced his radio essays, Mumia's, for 30 years, and I co-founded Prison Radio with Jennifer Beach. I produced Mumia's movie, Mumia Long Distance Revolutionary, and co-wrote it. In 2020, Prison Radio published Mumia Abu Jamal's magnum opus, the Murder Incorporated series. It's a trilogy, 3 400-page books. Its subtitle is Empire, Genocide, and Manifest Destiny. The co-writer was Stephen Victoria, who's also the producer of the Mumia movie. So they have a long time collaboration. Right now we're working on a 4th little book, a postscript. I was a lead organizer in Judy Berry's lawsuit against the FBI, the ATF, and the Oakland Police Department for the illegal actions when they tried to car bomb her, and we won. We won a $4.1 million jury verdict against the FBI and the ATF. So that's who I am in terms of my work in general. And how I came to be a journalist was a long time ago now, but it was at KPFA. It was the ability of the apprenticeship program and the First Voice program to incorporate community voice into KPFA's work, into KPFA's community, into KPFA's airwaves. I was in the 2nd apprenticeship program. And so I think it's incredibly valuable for us to recognize the power of the Pacifica network and the way it's been attacked, the way that our network has been destabilized is also a testament to its power. We know what it's done over the years, over the decades, many of us who've been around. We understand the potential for community people to have access to major market radio. And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that as producers, as people who do radio, as people who care about the network, who care about it, if we're in there, we can hold that ground. We can take that. We can really move the needle in terms of what happens inside if we participate. We can't do it all the time for decades on end. Often they create really toxic environments within it, but there are moments when we can. And I think Prison Radio and Mumia's commentaries are a really good example of that. They were not welcomed by Pacifica. They were not encouraged, but we knew when we had a community of people at KPFA that the voices of people inside prison was critical and that we were committed to having those voices aired on our radio stations. And so that's why they were our radio stations. You know, I look at the First Voice apprenticeship, WordPress blog, and they recognize the people at KPFA that I felt most close to when I was there in Berkeley, Apex Express, Hard Knock Radio, La Raza Chronicles, Voices of the Middle East. The women and the people of color inside the station creating magical programming is, I think, still a potential. I am thrilled that Betty and Ralph are on the air at WBAI, because I think that's, I was telling them when they were doing their blog and their podcast, I said, the difference between the, entrenched, let's just say, or the people who have long-term jobs at Pacifica, who only care about their jobs at Pacifica, and us, is that we create radio that is magical, that is incredible. They need us. They need people to create really good radio. They will not survive without us. And so, I find it very interesting whenever they trot out Mumia, it's not like they're trying to air Mumia, so they almost can't avoid it sometimes. So I applaud everyone who is still there, who really cares about the mission. And we want to be inside and hold people accountable. There is an important role for community voices on Pacifica's radio. It is its unique mission, and it needs to be held accountable to that mission. And so not that I can ever really guarantee that ideas that I think are really valuable will manifest, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. People cannot be on the air forever. I am more interested in hearing other people talk than my own self-talk. And if people are on the air for decades, I think that they should produce. They should step back and help others come up, as well as be occasionally on the air, but not take up the kind of airspace. Because if you have those skills to be on the air like that, you should be enabling the next generation. You should be bringing people behind you. You should be helping people through. And I think the apprenticeship program is an institutional way that has happened, and I really value it. I don't believe in negative organizing, but I do believe that we can change what's not happening on the air. And I can do it better myself. Like, I could call every single person who presses play at every single Pacifica station and ask them to air me as commentaries, because it's the right thing to do. And I bet I would get a really good response. I haven't had time. I was going to law school, but I'm going to get back there, and I'm going to start identifying the people that I like on the air and getting them to listen to me, or the communities that I think need to be heard. So it's worth the fight. It is worth getting in there. It's worth being there. Take care of yourselves, because sometimes it can be hard. But I want to encourage people to don't lose hope for Pacifica, because it's a magical.
Yeah, go ahead, Dwayne.
This is Nancy with a question. Hello?
Go ahead, Nancy.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
Yes, Noel Hanrahan, could you please tell the audience how they can get, because there may be affiliates in here too, how they can get prison radio on their air of their station? What is the process?
As soon as we record a prisoner, and we have 47 correspondents, including Mumia, we put it up at www.prisonradio.org. It's available to be downloaded and to be broadcast live as soon as we put it up, and we attempt to put it up as soon as we record it. We get it up. If you tell us, that's great, but you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to fill out a form. You can just air the material.
How many minutes?
We try and ask them to do it 3 to 5 minutes. So these commentaries that we produce at Prison Radio are trying to be accessible so that programmers can wrap around and tell stories around them and drop them into their programming. It's not a 15-minute slot or a 30-minute slot. Sometimes we put together a podcast on one issue, health issues or something, but usually it's just the voices of the prisoners. And I think that, when we started, there was KPFT's prison program, the Ray Hill program. That was the one before us, but we were very close to being the next one. And there was nobody else really on a consistent basis broadcasting from prison. Now It's ubiquitous. Now there's everything. People are broadcasting, but there's a big difference between Pacifica prison radio's work and the other mass media ear hustles from San Quentin and a ton of others. We don't censor prisoners' broadcasts. We work with prisoners to amplify their own voices and to make sure that they are heard. And we might coach them on length, and we might coach them on, how to voice it, but we do not censor the content. And I can tell you the content is edited or censored in many other outlets, but that's the magic of Pacifica. And the magic of prison radio is that we privilege people's own voices and their own thoughts.
Okay, thank you. So www.prisonradio.org. Thank you.
Yeah, it's in the chat. We have a couple of hands up, and then we do want to move to the station spokespeople. But I see Janet and Margot Iser. Janet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Noel, for all your work. I've been supporting your work for many years. I have a question for Bernard White, and it has to do with false narratives, which is something that has gotten Pacifica into trouble over decades. And one of the narratives I learned when I became a director in 2014 about you, Bernard White, and something about your stealing property from WBAI, whatever, that was part of the narrative that I got from Tracy Rosenberg and a number of people on this call in this meeting have heard the same thing. So could you talk about that narrative, or your version of what actually happened, and to set the record straight? Thank you.
Okay, all right. I've heard that also. I see, when I said earlier that the people that were on the outside throwing rocks at the station came inside. Well, when they came inside, they also brought with them a series of lies. I have not taken anything from BAI. If anything, I've spent money and without looking for it to get reimbursed. I spent it just because it was needed at that time. I don't know which story you've heard, because there was spewing many of them. I was even working on the air and not getting paid for it. I just don't, it's hard to answer something that doesn't really exist.
Bernard, I just want to say that there's a lot of narratives and stories that go around all the time, and there's a lot of oppression and there's a lot of censorship within the network. There just is, right? And so you could hear stories about me, you could hear stories about, yes, I sued Pacifica, you could hear a million different stories, but you have to look at what people really do and what people really did. And you have to look at the kind of programming they're doing. And you have to, take the narratives that come out with a grain of salt. And you should ask people directly, and you should talk to them off this call. But it happens a lot. Like, I was banned from KPFA while producing Mumia material for 7 years. And I had to they were still airing Mumia. So I had to take the CDs and drop them off at the Mexican restaurant on the corner. And they still aired them. They aired my programming, but they wouldn't let me in the building. Now, they were threatened. I mean, I didn't look like the little old lady, but I think it's really crazy that Pacifica does things that are not privileging the people inside who are doing the actual work of producing revolutionary programming. There's other place that we can do it, We need to be able to do it. And it's a struggle. It isn't easy, but we have to do it.
Thank
Not
you.
only
So,
that, hello?
go ahead, Bernard, but then we're going to have to move on.
Okay, you know, at BAI, we had several things that we did. We not only things on the air, but things in the community that brought the community in. And once they came in and took it over, they stopped all of those things. We used to give peer parties where thousands of listeners would come out, listeners and potential listeners would come out. They stopped it. We used to attend community festivals. You know, every year we would get a booth at the festival and meet the listeners and make them a part of what we do. And they stopped it. Volunteer doing fundraisers. People used to come up and volunteer. Sometimes they wound up getting on the air. They stopped all of that. We used to give plays that brought the whole staff together. You know, they stopped all of that. We should do all-day specials where we pick a subject and try and enlighten the community about exactly what was happening, having a variety of different spokespeople come on. They stopped that. It's just, you know, I think that was the most devastating thing that happened to Pacifica, was bringing in these outsiders, folks who have no understanding or history of being involved in radio, now making decisions on radio.
Can you name names?
I'm sorry, Janet. I think what we're looking at today is the consequences of what Bernard and Noel have talked about, and it's continuing in the same ways. And we do want to hear from people at the stations right now who are facing similar issues, so that we can figure out a way out of the decline that's happened. The whole purpose of this is to revive Pacifica as an anti-racist, anti-war, community-engaged radio voice that can, deal with the issues we've been talking about. So I think we do want to move on to the people from each of the 5 stations, and I believe we're going to begin with KPFT. V. Patel or Courtney. Venetia, can you? Yeah, there you go. New Day. Yeah, so there's a clarification in the chat. Technically speaking, the paid position of general manager was eliminated by the national board. And so it was not considered that he was fired. Thank you. I'd asked Courtney to unmute, and then she seemed to disappear from the call, so I'm not sure what happened, but maybe we can move around the 5 stations. Stimeli or Serene from WBAI, did you want to talk about the situation there now? Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Stimeli, looks like you were trying to unmute.
Yes, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I want to say first, I thank you to Akile for work she's doing now, Nora as well, and of course to our brother Bernard. It's, you know, the work he's done in the past was phenomenal. We miss him. So I'm here representing WBAI Fight Back. My name is Stahamili Knapp. Not the entire station, but you might remember that our station was taken off the air and put some generic programming was piped through. And that's when Fight Back started. We formulated to fight that, and we were successful in getting our station back and having somewhat of our local programming reestablished. But fundraising has become a problem. Our station is severely understaffed. We have very little staff, and most of it is unpaid staff. And as a result, we have no one to really help with fundraising aspects and all the other day-to-day things that need to be done to run a station. We've been stripped down that way. And as Bernard was saying, fundraising has become the major issue. The major programming on the station is around fundraising. So that we have a result in schedule disruptions constantly, such as program preemptions, programs that have been, their time lots have been changed or moved around or shortened, so that fundraisers can be put in those slots. Sometimes they're scheduled preemptions, sometimes they're not, they're random. Producers have been in the situation where they've only been given a few hours prior to the fact that they're being preempted to put in fundraising. And Bernard kind of summarized that in terms of who gets into that slot and what gets promoted. So therefore, a lot of our local programming that our listeners are interested in and look for and come onto the airways to listen to are not there often and shifted around. And we feel that of course is affecting our ability to raise funds. To that end, we have been, Fight Back has been interested in the past couple of years in terms of organizing our staff to particularly affect, since we're unpaid, majority of our staff is unpaid, into some sort of union representation in order to address some of the issues that we see around our programming situations. We have been, we've tried to have management work with us to put together a programming council. That has been unsuccessful. We also organized to put forth a grievance committee, since we don't have either one, so that we could address some of the issues that programmers have. Not to make it so that we're complaining or fighting or arguing, but to present what we think would be good options in order to, to stabilize our schedules. And our grids are just really pretty crazy at times. But we don't have either. And that has been a real form of resistance for us, especially since it's difficult resistance because we don't broadcast from one location much anymore. Most of us are broadcasting from our homes, so we don't have the opportunity to communicate with one another. It's been a very difficult time trying to communicate with other staff members. To that end, we've tried to organize, and we continue to try and organize our non-paid staff. We've taken a step back from the concept of organizing a union since it's unpaid. We are mostly unpaid staff. That would be difficult to do. And we have now tried to, we've written and published a document, which we are calling the Producers' Bill of Rights. And we've disseminated that to our staff and encouraged them to interact with it, adopt it, and also critique it. And this is an attempt to build interest and unity, create some unity among us. We find it very difficult. It's very difficult to organize with people that you don't see except on Zooms. And management, we were successful in getting management to at least have a monthly staff meeting where we could at least be in union together and talk about the issues at the station. They're not very well attended, but we did have to fight for that, and we won that once a month staff meeting. So, these are like basic things that one's supposed to have at the station. We don't have it. The staff meeting is called by management when they want to. They often just cancel the idea depending on their schedules or their interest or their ability to meet with us, and pretty much based on what they want to push at that particular time. So we have, at the moment, we have no news on our airwaves as a result of a dispute between our general manager and the producer of the news. BAI has no news. We had a 1.5 hour news program once a day prior to that. And due to this disagreement, we no longer are producing news in the evening. That show, that 1.5 hour program slot has been filled by a 1.5 hour edited edition of Democracy Now!, in addition to some other programs that are sometimes put into that slot. We, as Fight Back, find this appalling. We've written a response to that and presented it to our LSB and also to our general manager the fact that we abhor the fact that how can we be a community radio station if we don't have any news that reflects our community? So that's been a major problem that we're trying to address. And I will say that the last thing that I want to say, and then I'll give it to Serene, is that our station, we now have our intern program director, who has now been established as the no longer intern, she's the permanent program director, and she was placed in that position over the recommendations of our LSB. And so we feel and fight back that this was a violation of the bylaws. She was not in the final cut or among the group that was, I believe, I could be corrected on this, but I believe that her name was not in the final cut presented to the GM, and somehow she got the position. And that's being supported by folks at the national board, as well as our management. So we're in a difficult situation in terms of just trying to present material to our listeners that are relevant to our struggles in the New York area, and because we have to raise, they feel that we have to raise so much money. We have high rent on our transmitter and also on our studio. So that's where we are. It's a struggle. We're in resistance, and we look forward to organizing with other people from other stations around figuring out how to get past these obstacles.
I'd like to say something too. Hello?
Go ahead, Bernard. I was wondering also if Serene wanted to add something.
Okay. I'd like to say that, I've talked about the board and as being a negative, but there are some board members who are very, very good. The problem is that the other board members are the money class, and they're able to use their money to buy votes for the coming elections, and they wind up winning. So I just wanted to say that there are some really good and dedicated board members who are really trying to do the right thing. Okay.
Thanks, Serene. Did you want to add anything? I guess not. Why don't we go to
I think Serene was having trouble with her mic. Maybe we could come back to her.
Okay. Well, we're trying to, to do 3-4 minutes per person. So why don't we go to WPFW? Lou, can you unmute?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I represent the WPFW, and I hope my colleague and chair and the person with the greatest program on our station on the ground. Her name is Esther Averum. I know she's on the call. I hope she will also speak today. I joined this very timely town hall today with grave concerns about certain shadowy forces within Pacifica, attempting through stealth to cancel some current programming across our network and to homogenize our longstanding progressive content. A stalking horse of what is known as New Day Pacifica caused me to be aware, and thanks to our esteemed colleague and comrade Michael Novick, I became aware of an unsigned letter on Pacifica letterhead that was recently sent to the Pacifica National Board and National Office, purporting to be from Pacifica's loyal staff, as they were called, at all 5 stations, as well as the national staff, the Pacifica Radio Archives, and the affiliates unit. The letter, however, was unsigned by any individual and did not appear to have been circulated and discussed by the entire staff. Although the financial situation that outlines and asks for immediate action to solve its dire conditions and finances, the letter is apparently being used as a pretext for cleaning house, in quotes, for removing and replacing shows on the airwaves at many stations, and an effort to follow the dictates of many previous efforts over the last 2 decades or more to whitewash and circumscribe the news, public affairs, the cultural programming, and commentary on Pacifica to dovetail more clearly with corporate and mainstream media broadcasting. An ominous prelude to the present crisis was the resignation of Donald Goldmacher, who openly backed a formal challenge to the Federal Communications Commission of the renewal of WBAI's license. Some of the immediate concerns of all of this raises are the potential for the following: seizure of assets, loss of hard-won radio licenses, lack of responsible business management, layoffs of essential staff and contractors, and lingering labor issues, loss of valuable board members, loss of a major platform for anti-racist free speech, critical analysis, commitment to peace and justice, against imperialism, and community engagement. Lastly, loss of a vital democratic national media institution that has survived since 1946, when our far-sighted founder, Lewis Hill, decided to launch Pacifica Radio. It is indeed more than ever now, as we are more important than ever now, as we are witnessing a frontal censorship assault by the Biden administration on progressive forces. I will simply add that we have a problem within our station. So, as Bernard has mentioned, people with money. We have a couple of such people, one in particular who uses their money. I won't name the person, but we all know who she is, with money. And she buys her way into not only to be a member of the board, but to speak for others who align with her. So we have that problem here as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Elizabeth, did you want to speak? And some from KPFA?
Or Esther Rivera.
Oh, Esther, I'm sorry. Is Esther here from PFW? Yeah. Right. Thank you. So that is part of the context of this meeting, is that there's a serious financial crisis at the foundation as a whole and at most of the stations. KPFK is, we don't raise enough money in a day of the fund drive to pay for our operations that day. And so we're constantly in fund drive, and it, drives listeners away. I think some similar things have happened at BAI.
Michael, can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Noel. There is a systematic destabilization of the network by not, and it's on purpose. Like when we saw it at KPFA didn't have a development director for 15 years. And they did it on purpose because they wanted to starve the network, because they could control more of the decision-making if they created a financial crisis. And so I think that it's been a pattern. There was that like $150,000 check that sat in our, manager's office for 6 months until it basically expired. So it's like they have been doing it over the long term, and also not training people how to raise money and not encouraging people to raise money, or not investing in the way in which we can do it, not seeing it like, and we also need, okay, so that's true. They have been doing that, but we need to raise our own money. Now, it's an uncomfortable topic, but prison radio raises $400,000 a year because we need our people's voices on the air. And I'm never going to apologize for that, but we're going to do it because we need to do it. They wouldn't have given me the money. They would have not put me on staff, but we are going to do it ourselves. And so we have to learn some of the fundraising mechanisms, and we have to grow our own work and use their airwaves.
Thank you. So Elizabeth, could you say something about KPFA?
I was hoping maybe Serene could be given the opportunity to speak first from WBAI. She has important information that
I asked her, but Stanimeli spoke for quite some time, and we do want to get to the discussion. So I think if you could go ahead, we'll do some breakouts, I think, for the 5 stations, and maybe she can get back on at that point.
Okay. Is Serene here? If you don't mind, is she here?
I asked her to unmute earlier. I think she's still here. I don't see her. She's not listed. I asked her to unmute earlier, and then her name dropped off. Please proceed.
Okay. Hopefully she'll be able to speak at a later time during this program, because she's got really good contributions to make. I'm Elizabeth Milos. I'm KPFA LSB member. The reason that I joined Pacifica Fight Back as a member of Rescue Pacifica slate was after I joined the LSB, I saw basically a lot of the stuff that was going on. And I want to basically thank all of the previous speakers, especially Akile, who talked about the international struggle, the international viewpoint of, and the international viewpoint is something that we should really be looking at. This issue that's going on in Pacifica is not isolated. It's not an isolated issue. Few people realize that the Telecommunications Act of 1996, placed by the Clinton administration, reduced considerably the level of independent media available, truly independent media available, and created media conglomerates. I also see that all these different stations from Pacifica Fight Back, the people that are expressed here, have been dealing with this issue for a very long time regarding the silencing of Black and brown voices, and the silencing of radical voices, and the silencing of working class voices. a lot of the issues that we're discussing issues of finance, and I see in the chat a lot of people worried about, well, if stations are not making money, then how are we going to do it? And immediately it seems to me that there's a certain rush towards a so-called professionalism or a mainstreaming, which KPFA has been following that model for quite some time, especially in the news area where it's become more like NPR. All those different things it's not a coincidence that they're happening. And I would like to point out that there are forces within KPFA, the LSB KPFA, the ones who are so-called protectors, and specifically, this is public information, specifically Sherry Gendelman, who is the president of Pacifica Safety Net, and she's a member of the LSB. She is the one that filed a petition to deny the license to WBAI. This is just a continuation of the physical shutdown of WBAI. And it is not only an attack on WBAI, the attack has been against Pacifica Network for quite some time now. And somebody here mentioned how creating a crisis, Noel mentioned about how they're creating a crisis. This is the fear-mongering letter that the Pacifica Safety Net just recently sent out to people, asking people to send emails to the FCC to demand that the petition to deny, to support the petition to deny is something that's very serious here. We need to join forces, all of us. We might have our differences, little differences here and there with regard to the visions that we might have. But in general, I think we are all in agreement that the reason that we need to make sure that Pacifica stays with us is so that all of these different voices can be expressed. I'm a Chilean American, Chilean New Yorker, living in the Bay Area for more than half my life, and involved in community, involved in labor also. And right across the street, right in the same city as KPFA, we have the port of Oakland being privatized by the Oakland A's, John Fisher, billionaire. We have the schools being shut down. We've been demanding coverage of this. Finally, we got some coverage on KPFA regarding this, but there's clearly a neoliberal kind of bent on what is happening at Pacifica that is pushed for by the Democratic Party. There's also this this attitude that within the way that there's also this perspective that all of a sudden the FBI are our friends because they're attacking the white supremacist ex-president. All of a sudden the CIA is our friends. I mean, all of those kind of perspectives are very damaging and completely misguided. And it's creating a situation where people, the listeners, can so-called consider themselves so-called left or progressive, and at the same time be attacking the radical movements and the ones that actually are the ones that create the changes and demand the changes that have, brought forth the liberation of people around the world in different movements. In Chile, for example, we had so-called democracy, but those so-called democracy, and even those who called themselves socialist presidents during these past 30 years, were attacking the indigenous movement in Chile, the Mapuche movement, and using anti-terrorism laws to attack that movement. And then the social uprising happened in October 2019. And it became very clear that none of those political parties that had been in government all these past 30 years represented the will of the people. And it began, also we have had political prisoners in Chile for many years, including the Mapuche political prisoners who are fighting against the extractivist economy, against the destruction of the planet. And we had, in the United States right now, we also have privatization of the pension funds that was done in Chile at the point of a gun against the workers of Chile. What I'm mentioning Chile is because Chile was very clear in it was basically a test tube. And the test tube model, the neoliberalism also includes a lot of these so-called socialist or so-called progressive forces that want to pretend and put on an act in front of the listeners, but in the end, want to continue to have a model. They want to promote a model that would commercialize the station, the different stations. And I'm not saying commercialize necessarily openly, but in the end, we can tell by the level of financial the differences in terms of money, how the members, the different elections that take place, you can tell by the different access to mailing lists and things like that are affecting the people who get voted in at the KPFA LSB. And you know, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, somebody like Goldmacher, who got apparently most of the votes, it was due to the fact that there was a lot of misinformation out there. And I personally am being attacked and have been attacked and am being accused of disrupting the meetings, because these last few meetings, I don't know if people have been listening or not on the KPFTX site. If you guys listen to those meetings or get a transcript of them, you will see how the KPFA LSB has literally violated the bylaws in many ways. In one of the ways is that we presented a resolution to support Frank Sterling, who was a journalist, and we wanted the KPFA to support this journalist who is from the apprenticeship program, because he was facing police brutality and he was facing a pending legal case. And he was literally attacked by the past president, Sharon Adams, during public comment, and he was allowed to be attacked in this way. He was not supported by the station. He was supported by the PMB. We had an election and this comes to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting issue. Rescue Pacifica was pushing for the CAB, the community advisory boards, to be reinstated again, and we had to push against them a lot in order for the voting to happen. And then we find that they didn't even follow the single transferable vote. They followed a yes/no vote and only voted in their people there, 4 to a CAB that could have technically 24 people and supposedly needs to cover the program area of the entire signal area. And there is a working CAB group now of those who were nominated, but who still are not recognized by the KPFA LSB and who are doing good work in the community out there. And was led by Fred Cook. I know, I'm sorry, I'm going to get one more. The other issue is the listservs. There's control over the listservs. There's been, now they're also attacking, they're saying that just because you might mention the fact that, and which was informed upon in a public meeting, the fact that KPFA had delayed 7 months in presenting the financial documents for the audit to be done. If you mention that, even if it's as a result of a public meeting, then somehow or another, I'm attacking a staff member. No, that has to do with KPFA. If you say that the chair has not presented the financial documents when you're supposed to look at the finances of the station until one day before, that somehow is attacking the staff. No, that staff letter that Louis Wolf mentioned, it was not a staff letter. It was written by and this has been stated by the executive director. It was written by the directors and the managers. It was not written by all the staff members. And it was, and the members who I've spoken to regarding this said that they did not see that entire letter, or they did not see that letter at all in many instances. So I feel like we really need to get to the bottom and denounce what this latest attack on a sister station, which could cost Pacifica $50 million in assets, or $20 to $50 million in assets, depending upon how much you rate the value of a broadcast license. Regardless of what you think about Gary Null, there is no justification for attacking a sister station and destroying such an important institution as Pacifica. And we need to join forces and try to find ways of gathering enough money and going out of the community and getting the support that Pacifica deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do want to hear also from Steve Zeltzer at KPFA, and then we'll move on to KPFK. But I think that was an important contribution to situate the struggle in the kind of neoliberal attacks that you're talking about that are going on globally on working people, oppressed people, colonized people. Go ahead, Steve.
Steve, we can't hear you very well. No, you can't. We can't hear.
Steve, your sound is completely distorted. Yeah, much.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we're going to go to KPFK here in Los Angeles, Sylvester Rivers, and I think I'll say a few words, and then we'll go to WMNF. And we have the option of going into breakout rooms after that if people want, by the station areas, or yes? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Did you hit enter, Sylvester, after you typed it?
Yes, Esther, it is there in the chat.
Okay. We'll save the
Pacific
chat and get
Truth
it
and
to people.
Reconciliation Commission.
So Sylvester, why don't you go ahead, since you Thank you. I'll speak briefly, then we'll go back to Serene and Courtney. And then we do want to try to have a much larger discussion with everybody here. One way to do that might be doing breakouts by area. We also want to hear from WMNF. So I'll just be brief. I think that, people have laid out really that the fiscal crisis at Pacifica is a consequence of the political crisis that we're discussing, the economic and social and political crisis of the society as a whole, and that Pacifica represents a threat to the powers that be with tremendous potential to reach communities and empower communities to speak out in their own voice and with each other and to build alliances against this empire, against war, against repression, against racism. But Pacifica has been failing to carry that out because of elements within Pacifica that are preventing it from happening. And I think that it's critical that we build a base for the kind of radical transformative politics we're talking about, because when we had that at Pacifica, we were flush actually with funds. KPFK was doing, $1 million fundraisers in 10 days, 2 weeks. We were raising money to support solidarity with people trying to recover from the hurricane and the consequences of imperialism in New Orleans and Katrina, because we were engaged with the community and the community understood that and supported us. And as the stations have abandoned that, and so at KPFK, we have not had a news department for years. We briefly were able to get a cutaway from the KPFA news for about 15 minutes, and then that was taken away. The same thing that was described at WPFW, the news department was scrapped. The news director and the halftime staff person on the news was laid off. And so we get the same thing. We get headlines piped in from KPFA. We get the so-called Pacific Evening News from KPFA, which is, kind of the voice of the State Department. And we've had, there were tens of thousands of people in the streets for the last, many years under Trump, and KPFK was nowhere to be seen and never engaged with those people. There are 9,000 dues-paying members of Democratic Socialists of America alone in Los Angeles. I doubt that 10 of them are members of KPFK. There were thousands of people in the streets here and blocking traffic and closing freeways around the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But KPFK was not there. They were not there to witness the attacks by LAPD on people, brutalizing people, demonstrating for reproductive rights. There were tens of thousands of people in the street here for March for Our Lives, young people, teenagers against gun violence. KPFK nowhere to be seen. There was a mass demonstration at City Hall just the other day. There was a press conference covered by every media outlet in the city about the treatment of homelessness, the criminalization of homelessness in Los Angeles. KPFK nowhere to be seen and not heard on the airwaves. So that's the fundamental problem, that there's a massive censorship of these voices and a denial of access to the airwaves. And the solution to the financial problem is to open those airwaves back up to those voices. And, if we can do that, so that will take organizing people really, kind of on prospectus. We don't have access to very much of the airwaves at all at KPFK. We can't promise to get people on the air, but we need to mobilize people in large numbers, massive numbers, tens of thousands of people who could become members and support, a more radical range of opinion. I do want to answer one thing that Sylvester asked about. How do people buy elections? People buy elections because there are very, very well-funded Democratic Party machines in operation at KPFK and at KPFA, and they fund enormous mailers, email blasts, during the elections, glossy postcards that go out, and they've funded them at other stations as well, out of LA and out of the Bay Area. They're funding similar slates at KPFT and elsewhere. And that's a fundamental problem. Our proposal has been to get money out of Pacifica politics. If we have, a campaign for a local station board, all the information should come through Pacifica to the members. And if slates or candidates want to put something out, they put it out to the election supervisor, gets sent out along with everybody else's material, not trying to, put these glossy mailers and electoral machines. There are other proposals, but I think those are the fundamental ones. We have to get money out of Pacific politics. We have to build a radical base of membership at every one of the 5 stations. I do want to go back to Serene and Courtney if they want something to say, and then we want to hear from WMNF. Sylvester, you had your hand up. You want to say something briefly? Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. Thank you. Serena or Courtney, did you want to add something? And then we'll hear from Alvaro and Ruth.
Dr. Hallie.
Yes, can you hear me? This is Courtney.
Yes, go ahead.
Speaking. I am a programmer with Houston Indie Media out of KPFT in Texas, and I have to start because hearing all of this has really even further solidified the importance of continuing to keep the idea of Pacifica as it is without change. I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up listening to KPFA. I actually was listening live when Dennis Bernstein was physically removed and pulled off the air, and the station went to like a Christian station for a few days or whatever. And I remember I didn't even know who to talk to about it because I didn't know anyone else that listened to Pacifica at the time. It was not too long after that I moved to Texas for college, and I began getting involved with Pacifica here in Texas. And through that involvement, I became a programmer. So as I've been a programmer on the station, we've done really awesome grassroots coverage. Venetia, who you heard from earlier, has always been able to keep us in touch with things that apparently the station didn't want out. And it's because we have never shied away from airing those things. There is a group of people that are a part of KPFT right now that no longer want the Houston Indie Media Show on the air. Houston Indie Media was created out of the Indie Media Centers that were created out of the battle in Seattle in 1999. Houston Indie Media has been on the air for 20 years. And it is an institution, and it should remain. We were, in my opinion, I don't know another word to say, so illegally removed. We were accused of an election violation, and because of that, the powers that be were able to initially remove us, and then once we were removed, we were not able to be put back on. The last director, we begged and pleaded with him, and I will never forget his response. His response was that it was not his job to litigate the past. It was not his job to litigate the past. Well, I am here to tell you, if you don't litigate the past, if you don't understand what has come before you, if you don't look into and deal with things, then it festers and grows. And the same forces that he didn't want to litigate are the same forces that removed him. So we are here. We are fighting the good fight here in Texas. And we support you, and I'm so glad for this opportunity to hear from all of the other people. It has been extremely informative. I have to be honest, I'm sort of like nerding out, like Noel Hanrahan, and just all this stuff. So thank you so much, and we're here. We're going to continue to fight, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm done.
Thanks, Serene.
You're wasting.
Thanks. So we do want to hear from Alvaro and the folks from WMNF. And then my suggestion is that we do breakout rooms by the 5 stations, because I know a lot of people would like to speak. We still have almost 90 participants. And if we do the breakout rooms by area, then people have more opportunity to talk within the time frame that we have left. Go ahead, Alvaro. You have to unmute yourself.
Who is this person?
Thanks. So could I get a quick show of hands about whether people want to do breakouts or not? There are 80 some odd people on the call, and it's already 1:30.
Chair, I have a question about the breakout groups. This is Jonathan. Are you going to be recording each of the breakout groups?
They'd have to be recorded by somebody in the group. There's no way to record all of them simultaneously. So the groups would be recorded by someone in the group on their computer. The idea is that we would have about maybe 15 minutes of breakout and then come back and I see in the chat, public comment only. I'd say keep it plenary, but open discussion. Why don't people put their hands down for a second, for a moment, and then I'll ask for a show of hands on the question of breakouts. So lower your hands if you can for a moment, and then if you're interested in, Margot, can you lower your hand? And if you'd like to have breakout groups, raise your hand. Okay, I see very few. So we're just going to stay in the general discussion. And in that case, raise your hand to get called on. Okay, I have, we'll take it for people who have not been speaking. I have Marilyn Vakdoni, someone on the phone with 213-878 has her hand up. Rachel Barr, Bella DeSoto.
That's Dr.
Marilyn? Yeah, go ahead. There's a lot of rattling going on. Is that your own or someone else? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you, Marilyn. The next one I have up is a person on the phone, area code 213, ends in 5600. You have to unmute yourself. I think it's *6. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, this is Dr. Halley. I'll be very brief. I would like to say that I found this meeting to be better than average, looking back over some of the different meetings we've had in recent history. I was interested in hearing the report from the other stations, such as WBAI, particularly KPFA, and then also from Texas. I would say, in my experience, we've had plenty of very similar New Day and reactionary mischief in recent years. And sorry, it's a little dark in here. And I'm going to agree that there's been, how shall I say, we still occasionally hit the target on radical activist programming, I would say. But all too often, just give an example, such as Democracy Now! and the Hartman Show, I found that a lot of it is very bland, basically neoliberal content. It's just like blah, blah, blah. What is this? Where's the biting, activist, really hard-nosed radical stuff that we have in our Pacifica radio tradition? Now we seem to hear just occasionally, just far too rarely. 1 second. And we seem to be very timid about dealing with certain important topics. I mean, just to pick one, in the early 2000s, we would occasionally hear something related to 9/11, like 9/11 Truth. We know absolutely the official narrative is baloney, and this is a false flag operation, but except for a very occasional little mention in the middle of the night, there's been nothing on this at all. I guess that's it. Thank you, folks, and let's handle these serious problems.
Thank you. I have Rachel Barr next, then Bella. Oh, Rachel, she walked away. Bella, there she is. Rachel, you're up.
Sorry about that, Michael. I'm going to be very succinct. First of all, I want to thank everyone for all that they've said so far, especially Marilyn just now. Thank you very much. I think that before the Zoom ends today, we need to collectively come together to form some action that we're going to take, whether that's emailing or calling or whatever form that people feel comfortable with, because as Bernard said, and I used to work with Bernard very closely at BAI, as he said earlier, and as a woman from Florida, I'm sorry, I can't see your name because something's on my screen and I can't get rid of it. I, as an educator, I'm very concerned that fascism has indeed begun because they're banning books. And even the bad ones shouldn't be banned because that's how people learn. So I'm very deeply concerned about what's going on in Pacifica as a whole. But I have a question. I'm just throwing this out into the air. I don't, as it were, I don't expect an answer, but I'm curious if people think that since the attorney who represents Pacifica, since he's on salary by Pacifica, if you all think, as I do, that it's nepotism, that he also has a weekly program on WBAI. I've consulted my own lawyer about this. And he does not, he's gonna like familiarize himself more with the bylaws, and because we're incorporated in the state of California, he's gonna look into that too. But I'm deeply concerned that because this person is on salary, that he also has a program. I myself think it's nepotism, but that's just me. So we need to save this foundation, and we need to follow the bylaws. All of the people on all the LSBs need to follow the bylaws, but it's the management that needs to make sure that the things that they are responsible for putting into place, which is part of the bylaws, are put into place, because we need to run this organization in a functional way. And we need to get political, because I don't hear political things on BAI. I hear other things, and I'm not happy about it. So I'm gonna lower my hand, and let's think of how we can take over this stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bella, I'm going to go to people who haven't spoken yet, so that after Bella would be someone on the 832 on the phone. Go ahead, Bella.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. It has been a great program. Never enough time to discuss all the issues. And I appreciate the call to action. I think a petition nationwide is in order to start, only to start. That's only would be one piece of the puzzle. But radicalism is what we are and what we must demand. And that is radical change, and go back to the glory days. I always speak of KPFK as an LSB member, and way before that, the glory days of KPFK ended 2009. We didn't get here overnight. It has been a process turning the station into a home shopping network. The same has been done with WBAI, because certain people, because they can sell, management has favored this path. And this is what has been destroying our Pacifica Foundation. This is the mindset and the template that has been destroying us. And we must turn away from that. I'm having a hard time with my voice. Just this past Sunday, the Spanish language programmers conducted a fundraiser at a public park, and they raised $2,462. They were not allowed to promote this on air in English. However, they did do a bilingual card, which each programmer was able to promote over their program at night, Monday through Thursday, from 8 p.m. through midnight. Through that, we were able to raise that much. Had this been promoted on air, okay, we would have tripled, quadrupled, who knows, the potential to outreach to the signal areas in our network. But we must understand that by destruction of the network has been a concerted effort, which has been illuminated here before. It has been a process that has been in the works, which is why we have nothing on air to promote our elections or anything worthy of our community efforts. So this is what we must demand in our petition, that the airwaves are open to we the people in our signal areas. And we must be the forebearers of this and work really hard. I think that we can keep meeting here until the cows come home. But as a radical, I demand radical action now. And it's not about who can sell the product. It's about our mission that needs no rebranding because it's classic. Has a global perspective and is what we stand for and uphold. Thank you.
Thanks. Person on the phone? Yeah, go ahead. 832.
Yes, thank you. My name is Nancy Cyber, and you told me I'm from KPFT Houston. I've been on and off the board since 2009, December. I would like to say that a lot of you maybe have been hearing things for the first time today on this meeting, because a lot of members are just completely in the dark about the severe financial difficulties that Pacifica is going through, like KPFK with 80,000 unpaid power rent, a 60,000 unpaid electricity bill. We have insurance for even part-time workers, paid staff. This insurance covers even their dependents until their dependents are 26 years old. It's the same insurance that your governor of California has. I mean, we should be advocating for Medicare for all. And then, if it were to pass, which is called HR 1976, if it were to pass the House and go to the Senate, if it were to pass, Pacifica would be relieved of its most fastest increasing expense, which is health insurance. Okay, but what I wanted to say is the most important people that have the most power are the membership, the members. I mean, if they were to speak out or call in or give their opinion, if they were to even know what's going on, demand to know a report from the LSB report, which every station should be giving, and get on the air and be able to call in. Half the time should be allowed for the callers to ask questions. And then for a GM report, half the time again for questions from the members, from the listeners. If they were to get involved, that would be so powerful. It's always the people that have the most power to make changes. Now we're threatened. Members and our national directors, one from WBAI, he is advocating, and he's not alone, to slash and burn, cut shows that have poor history of donations. But my question is, that station has not had a programming committee for many years, maybe over a decade. I don't know. They don't have one going now. And a programming committee open to the membership, the listeners, could help to improve, to help to promote, help to liaison with students, could help to organize a lot of things, like going into adding visual, multimedia presentations. So we would have video and maybe a YouTube channel at each station. That's what Frank Sterling was recommending, because they have one at KPFA. It's the only one that has their own YouTube station. Go visual. So we connect our terrestrial audience together with the youth that like to click, click, click and see a visual. And we have we would be able to put captions on visuals. For the hard of hearing, we'd have a new audience of the deaf, and we'd be able to do translations. We would have new international audience, all with volunteer power. I mean, we could do so much. We could have a unique media, a multimedia, but we have people that are dragging their feet, and some of them are managers that do not want to do something different. They don't want to change. They want to keep the same. This is where the people come in place. And then underwriting is starting. And at KPFT, this was done about 6 or 7, maybe more, 7 years ago. $150 if the underwriter picks the time of airplay, and $75 if the station picks the time of airplay for, I don't know how many, six air slots, or so many. It goes by how many slots, how much money. All right, but this has been put on the website of KPFT. I mean, recently, I just found out like yesterday, and the IGM did not even ask the LSB about it. He just did it. And do you want this? Do you want underwriting? We did this before, and the result was horrible. The result was this: the big nonprofits had money to go on, like two to three of them, and the smaller, more numerous small nonprofits, you suddenly never heard them on KPFT. You didn't hear their events announced. You didn't hear, like, it didn't exist anymore. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going over time. Okay.
I'm just trying to wrap up.
Please urge for a programming committee that's open to the members to get their input and program everybody. And then also you need outreach to support these programs. Outreach, maybe flyers written in Spanish, or electronic flyers of your station put on every single library's bulletin board. That's free promotion. And also, I heard on the WBAI Finance Committee that the manager is going to put a paid staff on Fridays. What's going on? Why can't you just get volunteers? You have so many good unpaid volunteers. Surely you don't need to pay, because there's a hiring freeze. The PNB voted for a hiring freeze in 2020, even for replacing somebody. So, I mean, what is the PNB doing? It needs the membership to be involved. It needs the programmers to get involved in what's going on in the governance. It needs the people power. Thank you. I'm sorry I went over.
Thank you. It's okay. So there is a request that maybe do a breakout at some point for people who are actually programmers, and we'll try to do that. But it's pushing 2 o'clock. We said this was going to be a 3-hour call. That's 5 o'clock in the East Coast. So we're going to hear from the people who have their hands up, and then maybe after that we can review some of the action items that have come up quickly. And then if people want to stay on, programmers want to stay on, they can do so. Jim is next. Then I have someone on the phone who's showing as calling who's number 1 with your hand up. Then Fred Cook.
All right, thank you, Michael, and thank everybody for all their provocative comments. I'm speaking now as somebody who'd never been a director before, who came on the national board in February. I was confronted, as all of us are, by the simultaneous collapse of 3 stations at the same time: Los Angeles, Houston, and to a lesser extent, New York. We've been confronted with, on a weekly basis, situations where bills of large amounts had to be paid to pay electricity. That's the Los Angeles station. The station was going to get cut off. And in the case of New York, we have a deficit of about $20,000 to $25,000 a month. In Houston, we were confronted with fundraising drives only reaching 20% of their goals. In the case of Los Angeles, there are plenty of people here from LA. They can speak in far better detail than I can about the situation there, but I have seen the statistics and the facts about how their fundraisers have been accomplishing their goals. So that's the basic reality that I blame the PNB members in the past for allowing this situation to fester and develop to the point that we're dealing with 3 simultaneous problems at the same time. Now, most of the ideas I've heard here, I've heard repeated again and again for 30 years. These ideas have worked at some points, and nobody's protesting having radical programming or radical points of view. I find that, in the case of New York, a little silly to listen to, because I hear people all the time with those kinds of points of view. The problem is, where are the people supporting those points of view? Where are the people who are coming and giving their credit cards and checks to support those kinds of points of view? I've heard these same arguments again and again for 30 years. Where is the money coming in from? Now, the issue that was raised earlier about the program director issue, I can only say certain things because of the legal limitations of it, but one, our laws, the bylaws, are not separate from the laws of the state of California or federal laws. The issue of the program director is a situation that is subject to California nonprofit law. That supersedes the bylaws. people want to ignore that, fine. They can ignore that. That's why people intervene. And I find it, in my opinion, a little interesting that the very person who helped save WBI the most, Arthur Schwartz, is being argued about by some, that's my opinion, in a negative fashion. If we hadn't had him around, we might not be here. Now, the other thing about the program director decision is the program director is, as I understand it, on a 6-month contract. So where are the people who are clamoring to get rid of her? Where's the evaluation of her going on? There's an evaluation process that can happen. Nobody has decided to exercise that. And the issue of the other question is, we have been sued by all sorts of people. We just had to settle a lawsuit for $300,000. That's a public thing with Vernil, the guy who seized WBAI. So to sit there and attack Arthur, I find that rather absurd, frankly, because Arthur's probably going to be able to fight that and knock it down. And the board at the national level has been fighting back against all the attempts by the people at the Pacifica safety net to try to shut us down. All right? Everybody is, I'd say we've gotten almost a unanimity among many to fight against that. That includes the New Day people. So I find it interesting and provocative to hear your points of view. But again, I go to the bottom line. How do these points of view get implemented and actually pay for $1 million to $2 million budgets at radio stations? Okay? I just don't see that. And we have lost, since 2000, almost 2/3 to 60 to 70% of our audience for all sorts of reasons. And that accelerated starting in 2003, 2005. Nobody wants to ask that question. Nobody was trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And now, those of us on the national board, along with everybody else here, all the listener members, all the former members of the PNB, we've got to deal with this goddamn mess. All right? And it's a mess. But I ask people to think about how we're going to get out of this, and I just don't see some of these solutions as being viable. Period. Thank you.
Calling user 1, you're on the phone. You have to unmute yourself. I think it's *6. You have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Jonathan Markowitz. I assume I'm caller number 1?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to address something that many of you do understand in regards to our governance structure, but I believe that many are sort of not really in tune to what's been going on at the national board level going back years now. We have a lack of, I would say, adequate fiduciary documentation coming from each of the general managers, each of the signal areas. In many ways has been run as a closed shop without adequate, especially of expenditures on the ledgers that are submitted to the Pacifica's accounting services, as well as their chief financial officer. And this has been going back years. That we also have a compromised elections process for the local elections station boards. And this has been the case pretty much on and off since the first election in 2004, after the bylaws, a very dismal version of the bylaws that we intended, was compromised through a California arbitrated process where an interim national board was appointed through a very, very closed, cronied up process. That led to compromise of a much more democratic bylaws that those of us who were involved in that effort, going all the way back to 1999 and prior, in a long 6-year process, finally culminated in a much compromised version of what we originally sought. So our democratic structure has always been compromised at the structural level. And indeed, we never had the opportunity because of the difficulties in getting people aware of the specifics of our structure that we needed to address. There's also inadequate notification, which is required under California law for any corporation, nonprofit or profit, that has to do with notification of its directors as well as its other members. In this case, listener members could be viewed conceptually like shareholders do in a corporation that's open for public investment. In this case, listeners have a stake in this network. That's why we sought to have listener elected station boards, which have really no power under statute of what we created. So that still has to be addressed. But the other aspect is that there really is no way for most national board members to even be cognizant or to have time to listen to most of the national board meetings, some of which are not live streamed. They're by invitation only. And in my opinion, this has never been addressed, going all the way back to 2004, 2003, when the bylaws were ratified. So what we have is a problem. We have a dysfunctionality of our democratic structure. And now that we're facing this huge financial crisis, those who have sought to compromise this network for 30 years, in conjunction with I believe, the neoliberal Democrats and other forces that are arrayed in solidarity with the neoliberal Democratic objectives, which are certainly in contradiction to what Pacifica Fight Back is all about and what this network should be about, especially in regards to anti-war, especially in regards to U.S. foreign policy. Pacifica has been compromised, and essentially this has been a coup d'etat in slow motion for 30 years. Really, structurally and institutionally began in earnest in 1992. In order to de-radicalize Pacifica, this is chronicled fairly accurately in a lot of writings and articles that go all the way back to 92. So the history of Pacifica is misunderstood by many of the local and even national board members today.
Okay, John, can you try to...
What I wanted to emphasize here is that the push for underwriting right now is, especially at KPFT and KPFK and around the network, must not be allowed to happen in an environment of complete lack of accountability of financial matters, which goes back decades here in this network. And it's reached the point of, extreme effect in regards to people are making decisions. Tiny little cabal factions on the national board are making decisions. And if we allow this money to come in, especially in the form of underwriting, there is no accountability of when underwriting and grants money that has come in all 5 signal areas is spent. Nobody is providing accurate data. This has been exposed flat out on national board meetings that most of you are not in attendance of. And none of the recordings of those meetings are being posted, very few of them, by Otis McClay. The reason that is we've never had a uniform process with which all of the meetings, in my opinion, all national board meetings except those that actually legitimately fall under privacy concerns to go into executive session should be live streamed. Every meeting should be posted. Every audio of every meeting should be posted within 48 hours, as well as the minutes posted. And most of the meetings audios are not posted, and neither are the minutes. So most national board members don't even know what happened on these meetings. This is the actual state of affairs of our, quote, democracy. So I'm sorry, I differ with Bernard White, absolutely. He's wrong when he says that it is the democratic structure that has caused this problem. No, it's the lack of democratic attributes and accountability of our democratic structure that has compromised this network, and that has put New Day and those fair weather friends of New Day in a position to completely destroy this network, and it is about to happen. We literally have weeks to save the potential of this network. For all concerned on this call and everybody else, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I have Fred Cook and Margot among people who have not spoken. I do want to say that I think it's critical that in the democratic context, we have to build a radical base. That's the only way to make democracy work. Fred, go ahead. Yes. Mhm. Okay, thank you. So the last person who hasn't spoken at all is Margot. You want to go ahead, Margot? I have to unmute. And then let's try to figure out what we want to do. There are some various things in the chat, and we're past the time that we had scheduled. Go ahead, Margot.
Okay, I'm here because I am really a listener sponsor member who is being told I am the one who is paying for the running of the station. And I believe I like what he said about getting the people to participate in every aspect, including knowing about the finances, reaching out to the community at every event must have outreach material and information. And it is not right to have only a few people deciding on this. And I want to just say that the more we get involved in the community events, the more, and have a local news department and things like that. I think all the stations have a lot of commonality, and as a group, we can work together to make sure that we develop ways in which to reach out and to get participating and spend the money wisely. We have to be evaluating what the money is being spent on and make sure we're getting the wise spending of the money. And I keep putting it in the chat that here at KPFK, there is no official program director. So it's vital that the people who volunteer to be on the program oversight committee be the ones to work out a way to evaluate the programs, the submissions for new ones, the scheduling and everything like that. And that cannot be based on how much money a program is raised. And it's very bad to do that, because some of them we keep going over this and over this. They're at half an hour once a week, and they are supposed to be making as much money as something that's on 5 days a week and puts out really expensive premiums. Anyway, my big thing is I am a very involved listener sponsor for over many years. And I want our group to keep advocating for us to be the ones in charge. Even if we elect people, we still have to be telling them what to do and making sure they fulfill the mission statement of Pacifica. Thank you.
Thank you. So Serene, Elizabeth, and Venetia have hands up. Want to go ahead, Serene? Oh, okay. All right. Elizabeth?
Yeah, yes. As a part of the KPFA-LSB, one of the things that I really find very, very bad is that there's continues to be this misleading statements about how KPFA is going to be dragged down by Pacifica and how KPFA is sustaining the entire network. Basically, KPFA is part of Pacifica. The nonprofit status is Pacifica's nonprofit status. The building that was sold was Pacifica's building. And we need to make sure that we change our narrative. And I think that we need to, there's a lot of things that we brought up, but I think one of the major calls of action, and I do appreciate, differences in opinion. Jim, for example, he made important issue regarding the money. I don't agree with underwriting, especially if it's going to be tied to any programming or particular programs. However, we do need to figure out how we're going to get out of this crisis. And I think that all the different stations, all the outreach that we do has to be where they get the money has to go to be able to sustain the entire network and not look only towards whether or not we're doing okay. Our station is doing okay. This is a network issue and we need to solve it. Poetry readings, concerts, major outreach, having a presence in festivals, going to our different our own social networks of what organizations, associations that we belong to, unions, neighborhood groups. We need to be able to get more members signed up, and not only signed up for our stations, but signed up and informed about Pacifica, because many times what I've noticed with a lot of KPFA members is they only listen to issues related to their own particular stations. And in the case of KPFA, many listeners have been completely misinformed about what's been going on. And so we really need to step up the game and inform people about the importance of Pacifica network. Thank you.
Thanks, Venetia. And then I have a couple of comments, and then we'll have to decide if you want to keep the call going.
I forgot to say one last thing. Can I? One last thing.
Go ahead.
Please look at kpftx.org. Look for the different meetings that are being held, not only the meetings of your own stations, but the meetings of other things. September 17th, there's going to be a meeting at KPFA LSB, this next KPF LXB, which is going to be an important one. I think people should listen in and be on public comment if you are so inspired. That's going to be September 17th at the next KPFA LSB meeting.
Okay, so I want to point out that we did have some action items that we put out in the email and on the website. We want people to write to the PNB. It's pnb@pacifica.org, and to the executive director, that's ed@pacifica.org, and say that they need to stop silencing Black, Indigenous, and people of color voices, Asian programming, Latino, Chicano, Mexicano, Central American, Caribbean, all that.
What? The doggies are here.
Those things need to be reinstated, support the Spanish language broadcasts, and start serving our communities better. The marginalized communities. Please mute if you're not. Margot, please mute. We want to make sure that not only the directors, but all the local station boards can see the books of all 5 stations, the National Office, the Pacifica Radio Archives, the Pacifica Affiliate Unit, and understand what the financial picture actually is, where the money is coming from, where it's going. We want to get money out of Pacifica politics, and nobody can buy the elections for listener and staff delegates. And we want to do this kind of campaign that Elizabeth was just talking about. We have to build a radical base, even in the absence of having the programming that we would like to see on the stations, of members. There are people in unions, there are people in faith-based organizations, there are people in community and civic organizations that we can reach out to. We can find the influential people in those organizations and try to get them to get people en masse to become members of their local station for 3 hours of volunteer time at $25. If we got 10 or 20,000 additional members at every station, we'd have, more than $500,000 to resolve some of these fiscal crises and put us in a position. We do have to keep the foundation and the stations alive in order to make the changes we want. And I think another proposal I put in the chat is that if people can email us, it's pacificafightback@gmail.com, with suggestions about shows on their air that are worthy of, getting a wider audience, or other sources of information that, are not getting on the air, that they think we should share. We can do the kind of social media campaign that we're talking about. There are many of us. There were 100 people in this call, or more. There were 174 who registered for it. We can, send out to people links to things that they want to share and spread by social media and try to make them go more viral, and bring in a new generation of program content providers and people who can publicize what's going on. The stations are out of touch, frankly. Even the best of us are out of touch with what's actually happening out there. And we need to, have fewer gatekeepers and a lot more voices heard. So do people want to stay on this call? I don't know if people want to respond to Venetia's proposal that programmers might continue talking with each other. But we are at almost 2:30, and we set a 3-hour call. So, okay. All right, so this was transcribed, and thank the person who asked for that transcription. Most of the meeting is transcribed that way. And we also we'll save the chat. We will make this available as a recording. They'll be posted to YouTube. I tried to set it up to be able to live stream it simultaneously, and I thought I had all the permissions set up properly, but it still didn't work. So if somebody knows how to do that better than I do, we'll try that for next time. And but we will save the recording. We'll put the recording up on YouTube and on pacificafightback.org, and we'll make the chat and the transcription available to everybody who registered, even if they couldn't make it onto the call. And Serene, go ahead. Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah, so pacificafightback@gmail.com will work. And I did put earlier into the chat the link. We do have an outgoing, outward-facing, low-volume email list. If you send a blank email to SYMPA, SYMPA, at lists.riseup.net, and in the subject line of the blank email, you put subscribe Pacifica Fightback, you will get on a low volume list that, will have news about what's coming up and like that, but it's not a discussion list with a lot of back and forth. And again, we will send out the chat if you registered. We have your email.
Michael, can you place that on the chat right now, please?
Yeah.
Most important. And also, can you make the video of today available at the Pacifica Fightback?
Yeah, I said, well, once the call is over, it gets processed. We'll download it. We'll save it. We will post it to pacificafightback.org and on the.
You can convert it to MP3. Yeah.
There is a YouTube channel, and we'll put it up there as well for Pacifica Fightback on YouTube.
Thank you for a good meeting. And I hope that we can all really keep communicating and working these things out. It's very, very important. We have such a lot of things connected to each station. It's not just individualized. And I think we should be working together in many ways that we can to talk about things, okay? And really try to practically really get involved practically with the running of the station. I think that would attract more people too. Thank you.
Tomorrow morning is KPFK's LSB meeting from 10 a.m. Pacific time. We are going to have a very short meeting, unfortunately, because the rest will be on closed session to elect from a pool of possible GM candidates. So our time tomorrow morning will be very short, but if anyone here wants to start joining in and speaking out during public comment, is the way to educate the public at KPFK. This is the best way.
That's by Zoom. It is posted on KPFTX. It will be 90 minutes for the public meeting from 10 a.m. Pacific time. So that's 1 on the East Coast or noon in the central area. And we do take a half hour of public comment, usually interspersed among different parts of the agenda.
Wait, I'm interjecting something. I hope that the general manager would live in the area of KPFK and not somewhere in New York or wherever. There should be someone within the greater range of KPFK. So I'm bringing that up now because I don't know if I can connect to the meeting tomorrow, but please bring that up as this criteria. He must or she must live in the area of KPFK's wide range of signal. Thank you.
Ann, you looking to speak? We can't hear you, Ann. I don't know if you're muted or what. Or some issue in your sound. You can type it in the chat if you have a chance.
I just want to say that a potential GM candidate does not necessarily live currently, but has lived in Los Angeles, is familiar with the metropolitan area, the signal area, that should be sufficient. Thank
All right,
you.
well, everybody has their opinion. We're not, Nancy, you want to have the last word?
Yes, I wanted to say that recently the PNB voted not to allow public comment in Pacifica National Board committees. And I would like to put the voting record on the Pacifica Fight Back if the Fight Back allows me to. This is very troubling when they don't want to hear from the public. So that's another thing. If you lose connection with your boss, which is the membership, when you don't want to let them speak. Now,
Wow.
KPFK on the other hand has their public comment spaced out during the meeting so they can have the public comment speak before they make a vote on something, which is wonderful. Whereas on the other end, WBAI LSB public comment is at the very end and then adjourned, which gives no real, anyway. That's all. Thank you.
On tomorrow's agenda for the LSB, which may or may not be taken up, we have another dangerous motion is to prevent any outside fundraising of KPFK. And the fundraiser that just took place this past Sunday by the Spanish language programmers would not have been permitted. And this is being pushed by the Finance Committee, Kim Kaufman. So there are many dangerous situations going on. Another one is we're trying to rescind the muting issue at the Finance Committee of members, the minority, that are often muted when they are demanding information and point of order and adding items to the agenda. This, you can listen to the audio. You go to KPFDX and you can actually filter by whatever committee you are looking for in the network. You
Okay,
go to
thank you.
archive and you filter.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up unless anybody else has something urgent to say. Thank you all for your participation. I am sorry there was so much hostility to what we had as a program. We were very clear that the program was going to begin with the discussion about the APSP and continue with presentations before we got into some of this. I think the reason for that is that we see that that is part of the solution to Pacifica's problem. Covering those issues and connecting what the stations are doing to the political, social, economic crisis of this society and this planet is how we will be able to survive. I'll say one last word. I was what was called the Los Angeles bureau chief for the Guardian newspaper. This is not the one from England. It was the New York Radical Guardian. It was in existence from about 1946. It was an independent socialist radical newspaper. And unfortunately, without anybody informing its readership or its staffers, they began to eat through their endowment. They were using money that was meant to sustain the paper over the long time for current expenses. And they went out of business overnight. And I do not want to see that happen to Pacifica. And that is the danger that we're facing. We need to be very clear about that. And the reason that New Day can get away with the shit they're doing is because they constantly raise the specter of bankruptcy, and they're trying to push us into bankruptcy so they can carve it up and eat up the pieces. And the way to prevent that at this point is we have to stay out of the kind of debt we've gotten ourselves into. We must find a base of people who are willing to support the prospect of the kind of program we're talking about. And again, I'll reiterate, if every station could get 10 or 20,000 new members, which would triple the membership of any of the stations now, we would be out of the fix we're in and we're in a position to actually fulfill the potential that we have. So I think that is the key action. The key action is to actually sign people up as members of your station, and whatever it takes to do that. But there are people on this call and there are people not on this call who are very, very influential in mass organizations and labor unions with 50 and 70,000 members. And we have to start getting those people to see that Pacifica is vital and it must be maintained. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I want everybody to know that the Pacifica National Board a week ago passed a motion pushed by Kim Kaufman from our local finance committee as treasurer to raise the bar of for every manager at the local station boards, at the local stations, the units, from $5,000 to $10,000 before requiring oversight and approval by the LSB. This is critical. This is going to further jeopardize our expenditure that's been out of control. And we must write to the PMB about this, against this. And the only person that actually voted against it was Beth Van Guten from our local director, KPFK. It's amazing. It's amazing to raise
Yeah,
the
well,
bar from 5,000 to 10,000. It's criminal. It is dangerous.
yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. A, the money is not there, and B, that's one of the many regulations that have been honored in the breach that's never been, actually enforced, unfortunately.
Yes, but the thing, Michael,
Yeah.
the issue
Mhm.
is that it is opening
Yeah.
up the gate flood, the
Uh-huh.
floodgate for
Okay.
people to continue. The reason why we owe so much in utilities is because the priority given to those expenditures. The monies are spent elsewhere and we're not getting the proper accountability. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. And keep listening. Stay in touch. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Bye. Have a good
As
rest
they
of the
used to say,
day.
all power to the people.
All
All
power
power
to
to
the
the
people.
people.
All
Organize,
power to the
activate.
people.